Clover workers are calling on the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to intervene to stop retrenchments and factory closures. Hundreds of striking Clover workers picketed outside the department's Pretoria offices yesterday. Joining me for this conversation is Food and Allied Workers Union's Deputy General Secretary Vuka Chonco to give us some more detail around this. Vuka, very good morning to you. Thank you for your time. We saw some of the employees protesting and really wanting to be heard last year, and this is continuing into the new year. What are some of the big challenges that are being faced here in efforts to ensure that jobs are retained?
Thank you very much. Firstly, the issue here is that this is an initiative of the employer who is arrogant, who is not willing to make any changes that are designed to resolve the entire attack or against the workers. Here you have the employer who made a decision to cut the salaries of workers by 20%. Secondly, to impose a condition of reducing van drivers from 2 to 1, meaning workers will have to drive, a single worker has to drive alone for a period of 12 hours and offloading and loading merchandise alone and doing administration work just as much. You also have an employer who made a decision that he will create a shift configuration of his design to a compress shift, of which if workers don't agree, and the employees will be dismissed. Now, these are decisions of the employer that are imposed to us, of which we vehemently oppose to them. And because of that, we have found ourselves on strike because the employer is not reasonable in terms of resolving the whole issue. Now, the activity yesterday was the time when we were advancing our struggle against this initiative, this brutal attack to workers, and where we were submitting a memorandum to the Department of Trade and Industry to say the government is also responsible in a way, the reason behind why we are being attacked like this by this employer. Because one, it is the same department that allowed the Israeli billionaires to buy Clover company to be owned by the Israel. And now we want the government to say, I mean, the government in Israel do not have similar interests that we have in our own country. The fear that we raised immediately was job losses. And at the time, the Competition Commission did not listen to us. Instead, they concluded and imposed that there will be no job losses, and this was the conclusion in a period of about 3 years. But unfortunately, before that 3 years, we've already lost 2,000 jobs. And when we invite the government to be involved, the government is not. They have been quiet, and that is why we had to take a march to Pretoria and to hand over a memorandum to say, these are the people whom you welcomed last time. Look what they are doing. They are doing the same thing that we warned you against, but you listened to them. Today, we are losing jobs. Today, the Clover is planning to close factories. Today, Clover is cutting salaries. You know, today, Clover has no interest in terms of what the country is responsible for. In fact, the fact that the Melco consortium that bought Clover is made a commitment to invest in the country, it goes to show that it was actually a lie, because now we are losing jobs instead of creating jobs, of which they themselves committed to be creating 500 jobs. But today we have lost 2,000, and the number is going to continue. So that's what we're demanding, the state to be directly involved and stop the whole thing so that workers can go back to work unconditionally.
You say that government has been quiet and you went and handed over a memorandum of your demands. What was the outcome of that? How were you received?
Well, you will know that the normal attitude of the government is that they will respond, they will discuss among themselves, and then it ends there. As far we have experiences before where we've been submitting memorandums with a hope that they will respond, and it's not the case. That is why we had to, just after delivering that memorandum, we had to go to the union buildings and stage a sit-in there until we demand that we meet with someone who's going to give us a meeting with the minister, and not just the trade, the DTIC minister, but also the Department of Employment and Labor Minister is also responsible, because this is the department that is responsible to make sure that there are fair labor practices in workplaces, to make sure there's industrial peace between business and labor. But they are quiet themselves. So we had to go there and demand that we meet with these two ministers so that we can be able to push towards a resolution of this matter. Because otherwise, the reception in terms of delivering a memorandum, after that, nothing happened.
So let's talk about some of the aspects of this memorandum, what it contained, and perhaps some deadlines when it comes to some sort of movement and action in preventing the retrenchment processes.
What I must first talk about is the deadline. There is no time frame that we gave them except to say they must react immediately. That is the time frame, because we need this urgently to be resolved. But the argument that we were actually advancing in terms of the memorandum is revolving around the same thing, to say the owners of this Milco consortium, the promise that they made to come and invest in South Africa was actually a lie, because in contrast with creating jobs, we are losing jobs. And secondly, they don't have any track record, by the way, of a better investment, which it doesn't make any economic rationale for the South African economy, because these are billionaires who are in the state where there is apartheid. So we were also submitting to the government to say, look, you can't tap comes to a cause of supporting Palestinian people because of the apartheid Israel. If you are supporting Palestinian people, you are also supposed to be responsible and make sure that any apartheid state, in particular Israel, is coming to South Africa to buy companies. You are responsible to stop that transaction, because you know that the operation going forward of these businesses will conform to austerity measures, will conform to a brutal attack to workers in terms of job losses, in terms of working conditions that do not conform with our own labor laws. Look, already, if you read if you take a closer look of what we are responsible for as a country, we are responsible to create jobs, but Clover is creating unemployment. We are responsible to create more factories to build our economy. Clover is doing the opposite. They are closing factories. Workers ordinarily are receiving increases every year for purposes of chasing unfavorable economic conditions because of food price increases, electricity price increases, and so on. But Clover is doing the opposite. They are decreasing the salaries of workers. So that is the attitude of the apartheid state in our own country, where this government is, or should I say, where these billionaires in this apartheid state are pushing, which is contrary to the very same mandate of the South Africans to do exactly what I've just mentioned, creating jobs and making more factories and to build our economy. So that's what we're putting across to say, so be directly involved. But at the same time, we were saying, in terms of your reaction, you need to immediately scrap all the austerity measures that are initiated by Clover of cutting salaries. Reinstate all these workers who have been dismissed for refusing to take these austerity measures. We are demanding also a moratorium in terms of job losses across all Clover factories. And just as much, what we want, because this Milco consortium has no interest that develop the South African economy. We want to take Clover back to South Africa so that it can be owned within the country, and it must conform with the program of developing our own country and not what they are doing. This is what we're in the main submitting.
Very well. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Fawuz, Vuka, Chonco, they're speaking to some of the pressing concerns and the what is contained in the memorandum of demands as Clover employees are being retrenched, and they're saying that Clover would have cut more than 2,000 jobs by the end of February 2022.